Iran's supreme leader Ayatollah Ali Khamenei issued a stern warning to the United States on Thursday, declaring that Tehran had delivered a slap to America's face by launching a missile strike on a U.S. military base in Qatar. His remarks, broadcast in a pre-recorded speech on Iranian state television, marked his first public appearance since a ceasefire agreement was reached earlier this week following a sharp escalation in regional conflict. Khamenei, 86, spoke in a hoarse voice and appeared noticeably fatigued as he addressed the Iranian public for the first time since June 19. Despite his frail appearance, the supreme leader delivered forceful rhetoric aimed at both the United States and Israel, Iran's long-standing adversaries. He downplayed the significance of Sunday's U.S. strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear sites, which President Donald Trump described as having completely and fully obliterated Iran's nuclear program. Khamenei rejected this claim, saying they could not achieve anything significant. Notably absent from Khamenei's 10-minute address was any mention of the status of Iran's nuclear facilities or centrifuges following the devastating strikes. His version of Monday's retaliatory missile attack on Udeid Air Base in Qatar also differed sharply from U.S. accounts, which described the incident as a limited strike with no casualties. The Islamic Republic was victorious and, in retaliation, delivered a handslap to America's face, Khamenei said. This action can be repeated in the future. Should any aggression occur, the enemy will definitely pay a heavy price. The White House dismissed Khamenei's comments as an attempt to deflect from the damage inflicted. Any common-sense, open-minded person knows the truth about the precision strikes on Saturday night, said Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt. They were wildly successful. Rafael Grossi, director of the International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA), supported that assessment, stating Thursday that the strikes had inflicted very considerable damage to Iran's nuclear facilities. I think annihilated is too much, but it suffered enormous damage, Grossi said in an interview with France's RFI. The IAEA has not yet been granted access to inspect the damaged sites. Iran's own foreign ministry spokesperson, Esmail Baghai, acknowledged Wednesday that the country's nuclear infrastructure had been badly damaged. Khamenei had not been seen in public since seeking shelter in a secure location, following the June 13 outbreak of war, when Israel launched strikes targeting Iranian nuclear sites and senior military officials. Sunday's U.S.-led assault came days later, prompting diplomatic pressure from Washington that helped bring about Tuesday's ceasefire. According to Khamenei, the U.S. only intervened in the conflict to save Israel. It felt that if it did not intervene, the Zionist regime would be utterly destroyed. Yet it gained nothing, he said. The retaliatory Iranian strike on Al Udeid Air Base was described by Khamenei as evidence of Iran's reach and readiness. Iran has access to important U.S. centers in the region and can act against them whenever it deems necessary, he said. Trump has described Iran's response as every week, asserting that Tehran warned Washington in advance and caused no casualties. Signs of life slowly returned to normal in Iran on Thursday. Tehran reopened parts of its airspace, and domestic and international flights resumed in the eastern half of the country. Streets in the capital saw an increase in traffic, and many shops reopened for the first time since the conflict erupted. Casualty estimates vary. Iran's government reported 606 dead and 5,332 wounded, while the Washington-based human rights activist group said the real toll may be far higher, with at least 1,054 killed and 4,476 injured. Of those killed, 417 were civilians and 318 were members of Iran's security forces, the group said. On the Israeli side, at least 28 people were reported killed and over 1,000 wounded during the 12-day conflict. Israeli officials said Iran fired over 550 missiles at Israeli territory, 90% of which were intercepted. Israel claimed to have hit more than 720 Iranian military and 8 nuclear-related targets. Amid the aftermath, Trump hinted at a diplomatic opening, stating that American and Iranian officials are expected to engage in talks next week. However, Iran has not confirmed any planned negotiations. A 6th round of U.S.-Iran talks, previously scheduled to take place in Oman, was canceled following the outbreak of hostilities. Despite the ceasefire, Iran's parliament voted Wednesday to fast-track legislation that would end cooperation with the IAEA, casting doubt on the country's willingness to compromise on its nuclear program,